my old workplace gave all employees the option of coming into the office at least 3 days a week. And
Hi, Tina. Hi, Rhett. Hi, Jacob. Welcome. And Valeria, how are you doing? Good to.
Hello.
All right. So, Fernando, I will just double confirm with you. Fernando is our IT representative that helps us out with our Housing Advisory Board meetings. He'll be the one giving us the green light. Fernando, we now have a quorum. So, and hi, Linda. By the way, I see Linda, our new Diversity and Equity Officer. She's also joining us as a staff just to chime in and keep up to date. So, Fernando, you can give me the green light whenever you're ready, and then I can start the meeting.
Yes, sir. You're good to go.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to our Town of Apex Housing Advisory Board meeting, Wednesday, March 16th, about 3:02. This is a virtual meeting that's also being streamed live through our town YouTube channel. I have the agenda. Can everybody see my screen? You should see just a snapshot of the agenda. It's a pretty simple agenda this afternoon. We got our roll call and then to approve our meeting minutes from our very first meeting that we had back on January 28th. And then to go over the affordable housing incentive zoning policy, just bringing this back as an informational item, really to focus on the feedback we received from both the development community and the housing advocate community. So that's our agenda. It's pretty straightforward. Agenda number 1, I'll turn this over to Chair Welch to conduct the roll call.
Okay, thank you, CJ. Well, in order to make sure I was at the beginning of the meeting, I've been online now for about the past 2 hours, so it's I'm kidding. So I'm going to go through. I think I saw Rhett. Will you, if each of you could just respond by saying present or here or whatever your favorite phrase is, that'd be great. Rhett?
Here.
Okay. Valeria?
I'm here.
And if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, please correct me. How did that was good? Okay. I think I heard that Paul is going to be a little late attending the meeting, and I don't see his initials, so he may be joining later. What about Seth? Is Seth on the line?
Seth is out today.
He's out. Okay, thank you. Jacob, I saw your initials.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Welcome. Molly?
I'm here.
You're there. Audra is not able to join us today, but Tina is with us. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yep, correct.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Okay, so we're all good on that. We've got a quorum.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Thank
but
you.
we do. Okay, we'll move on to the meeting minutes from last time, from January 28th. I'm going to ask a loaded question here. Did everyone have a chance to at least scan through the excellent meeting minutes that Nora provided with us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Unless there's any discussion, any corrections, I'll look for a motion to recommend the approval of the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Okay, and that was Molly, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're recommending approval of the January 28th, 2022 regular meeting minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Rhett.
Rhett, okay, thank you. And I guess I'm supposed to do a roll call vote here. I'm going to say yay. Rhett?
Yes.
Okay. Valeria?
Yes.
Okay. Jacob?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
And Tina?
And Tina's our non-voting member, so she's off the hook.
Right,
So yeah, so she's
okay.
good. Yeah, she's off the hook. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a unanimous recommendation there, so that's good. So I'm going to turn it back over to CJ to go over some of the results that came in between the last time we met and today.
Great. Thank you, Chair Welch. Appreciate it. Thank you, Housing Advisory Board. I'll start off here because we may have some individuals that are just joining us for the first time and weren't here on January 28th or weren't familiar about the process. So just for those that are watching and for the Housing Advisory Board, just to remind you, we had our very first meeting on January 28th, which was our regular meeting. And then on February, and as a result of that meeting, you had directed staff to continue to reach out to our development community and our housing advocate community. So what came out of that was a couple surveys and also a couple informational sessions. So on February 11th, we issued a survey to two separate surveys, one for the development community and one for the housing advocate community. And then on February 21st, we held an informational session for the development community. And then on March 2nd, for the housing advocate community, had their own informational session. And March 6th was the deadline for those surveys. And then here we are on March 16th, our second meeting, which is a special meeting. And then we have our regular Housing Advisory Board meeting on April 7th. So that's just a quick snapshot of the timeline. A lot has happened in a short amount of time. So I'll start and just break this presentation up in two sections. We'll focus this part of the presentation on the developer survey feedback summary. So we had 58 participants, which means 58 individuals actually took the time to start and complete the survey all the way through, and received 136 comments. And I'm just going to go down each incentive one by one, giving you a summary of some of the feedback that we received for the Housing Advisory Board. And you got copies of the full surveys, so you had time to hopefully go through those. So, and for those that might be watching for the first time, there are 10 proposed incentives as of right now that we're considering. Incentive number one is to allow an applicant or developer to rezone or upzone to a higher density zoning district. On the survey, there was a sliding scale from I would never use this incentive all the way up to I would definitely use this incentive. So, well, I just kind of circled here where it kind of landed here based on the metric. So this particular incentive scored above average, as you can see, because average would be right down the middle. So definitely above average. But some of the feedback we received from the development community was, increasing density could trigger additional neighborhood opposition. You could, obviously increasing density could traffic impact, noise impact, school district impact, possibly. So they just wanted to notate that, increased density could increase neighborhood opposition. Also, the rezoning and map amendment process is costly. So we received a comment on that, and that they prefer densities above the 2045 land use map, given the requirements for open space, RCA, and other non-developed spaces. And there's not enough density within the incentive itself to offset 5% for affordable ownership units. We've seen the comment of that, and supports incentive, but it depends on the number of affordable units that the policy is being recommended for. And then higher density zoning would allow more homes and a lower land basis to help promote affordability. So those are some of the key comments. For the second proposed incentive, which is density bonus, this is applicable in that high density multifamily conditional zoning district, and that is currently limited to 14 dwelling units per acre. So this is what we were studying here as far as a density bonus in that particular zoning district. So some of the feedback we got was, we actually got a couple, I think 2 or 3 comments to recommend instead of 14 dwelling units per acre to increasing that to 16 dwelling units per acre. And then once again, additional height can equate to additional cost. I mean, if the density gets so dense to where the developer or applicant's going to add additional floor, then they might have elevator requirements, and obviously there's infrastructure requirements. And then to consider expanding this particular density bonus to additional zoning districts above and beyond the high density multifamily, and would use if allowed for townhomes, duplexes, and quadplexes, and would consider utilizing with the reasonable amount of affordable units. Incentive number 3, which is to increase maximum building height, that scored just average, right down the line. Some of the feedback we received was would use this incentive if coupled by permitting townhomes by right. Additional height, once again, can equate to additional cost. And with a reasonable percentage of affordable units, this may be helpful. And unlikely anyone will build over 4 stories in Apex. There was definitely some comments about, Apex becoming high-rise, apartments, but in the comments. So for the proposed incentive number 4, which is to reduce building setbacks, that scored slightly above average. Some of the comments and feedback were to combine this incentive with other development standard adjustments and fee waivers. Building same units on less land would result in less infrastructure. Ensure any gains made with increased density would not be lost with increased development cost. And this is a factor in multifamily projects, but not so much in single family detached. Proposed incentive number 5, to reduce lot widths. This one scored just above average. And couple this incentive once again with density bonus and make sure there is enough density once again to offset the cost of adding affordable units. Benefits townhome and single family more than apartments was a comment we received. And the planned unit development process for anything over a duplex is costly, and reduction of lot widths would be well received, but depending on the affordable housing requirements. Proposed incentive number 6 is a reduction of our resource conservation area that scored above average. The comments received would support this incentive with a meaningful reduction more than 5 to 10%. More buildable area may allow for affordable units. And then to couple this incentive with other variances in development standards and to eliminate this requirement entirely, meaning eliminate the entire RCA requirement for projects that bring housing for 125% of the area median income. And then this helps with lot yield issues on sites, and extra building acreage helps. And these items reduce density but add cost to HOA dues. For the proposed incentive number 7 was to reduce parking requirements. Some of the feedback we received is this is mainly helpful more so in dense urban environments like downtown Raleigh or Durham. Consider increasing the threshold to a half-mile radius. Right now it's at a quarter-mile radius, and sometimes lenders require a certain minimum number of parking spots, for example, tax credits. So it may not help those type of projects. Proposed incentive number 8. This is to reduce the sidewalk requirements. That just scored average. Would support the reduction in the amount of impervious surface that would have to be built. A minimal cost impact. We received another comment, nominal impact is one element in a suite of incentives that may be useful, and we want communities to be walkable. And proposed incentive number 9, the expedited processing. This would be only applicable if at least 50% of the residential units or lots are set aside for affordable housing. This scored just slightly above average. If processing is too fast, then property owners may not have enough time to be heard. The 50% threshold is too high. Would be desirable if the affordable unit threshold was reduced down to 5%. And town must ensure adequate staffing is in place to expedite reviews. It would work for affordable housing, low income housing tax credit projects, and time value of money is real. Proposed incentive number 10, financial incentives with the thresholds that at least 20% of the residential units must be set aside as affordable housing to low income households earning no more than 60% of AMI. So that was the threshold there. Scored just above average. Once again, the threshold, 20% threshold is too high. Consider 10% up to 60% AMI and 10% up to 80% AMI. And a grant would help versus a loan. And municipal fees and regulations drive up sales prices. And this is a good idea for affordable housing developers because they're more likely to meet that 20% threshold, for example. There was an opportunity in the survey for developers to also give additional feedback above and beyond just rating and commenting on those proposed 10 incentives. So some of the other feedback we received from the development community would support fee reimbursements for capital or recreation fees, reduce other associated conditions that drive up costs like solar or off-site pedestrian or roadway connections, The town could purchase property for affordable housing as a mechanism. Consider various AMI percentage ranges. Even meeting 100% AMI is difficult in the current construction environment, is a comment we received, and waive permitting, park and rec, and planning related fees altogether. And then possible issues on ownership affordable units with HUD FHA rules and federally backed loans that focus more on the rental product. And then we held an informational session as well, and we received a couple questions during that informational session on whether this policy is mandatory or it's not mandatory. So this is definitely a non-mandatory policy. So we clarified that for the viewers on that call and made that very clear to the Housing Advisory Board as well. This is a non-mandatory policy. Who is responsible for marketing, screening, and selection? The marketing, screening, and selection process of affordable units. The applicant is ultimately responsible through the zoning condition. However, of course, town staff is here to help with oversight, to help with income review and qualifications, and develop a marketing plan and working with the applicant. Other comments we received to date were HUD regulations do not allow the builder to income verify buyers. And then the vast subsidy for low income housing tax credit projects. There is vast subsidy for low income housing tax credit projects, but we can't replicate that in for sale development market rate. Because they're not getting the same subsidy as a tax credit project is what they're saying here. And maybe single family for rent would work. And then deed restrictions on income limits violates FHA rules. Banks cannot issue mortgages on any FHA or FHA insured product, for example, with deed restrictions, for example. So those are some other comments we received. Turning it over to the housing advocate survey side. So now the other side of the coin. We had a total of 39 participants complete the survey with 33 comments. One of the questions we asked is, what goals should the town set for the minimum percentage of affordable units to include in a market rate development? And there was a consensus there to include anywhere between 6 to 10% as affordable. And then in second place was more than 10%, and then right down the line, as you can see. We also asked the question is, what should the town target as a minimum affordability period for affordable housing ownership units? And so it was very close between 10 and 30 years. 10 years officially came ranked first, and then there was a tie between 20 and 30 years. And then there was a big significant drop with all these other options. Next question we asked is, what should the target town target as a minimum affordability period for affordable rental units? And there was a clear consensus. 30 years was the top score, and then 20 years, and then down the line there was a big fall off at anywhere between 0 and 25 years. So 30 years was number one, 20 years was number two. And then we asked here, as the town works to provide more affordable units for rent, prioritize which household income categories are most important to serve. And clearly the deepest affordability scored the highest, 89% for households between 31 to 50% AMI. So this is what the housing advocate said we should be targeting for affordable rental housing that's produced. And then in second place at 85% was the lowest category, the extremely low income category. And then 81% was between 51 to 60, that low income tier 1 category, and so on and so forth. So the deepest affordability was definitely scoring the highest, and no surprise on the ownership side. Same question, but for ownership units, what should the targeted AMI percentages be? So less than 70% AMI clearly scored the highest. 71 to 80% scored this in second, and then 81 to 100, which is the median, and then 101 to 110, which is workforce, scored the lowest. So, and then prioritize the type and tenure of affordable units needed in the town of Apex. What scored the highest here was a tie for 3 different categories. So at 81%, there's 3 81% here. So we have multifamily apartment for rental, we have single family for rental, and we have accessory dwelling units for rental, or ADUs, scored the highest. And then next in line at 77% was single family ownership. And then there was a tie between duplex for rental and townhome or condo rental, and then so on and so forth. So that was interesting. So we had three at 81%. And then as far as prioritize the types of affordable housing needed most in Apex by bedroom size, what scored the highest here, as we once again had a tie between 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, and then there was a 1 bedroom was next, 4 bedrooms, and then studios, and then more than 4 bedrooms scored the lowest. So we had a tie there between 2 and 3 bedrooms. And then prioritize the type of affordable housing needed most in Apex by household classification. Family, producing affordable housing for family was the number 1. And then there was a tie here between senior, elderly, and workforce housing. And then down on single, disabled, and then other, as you can see from the screen there. So other comments, there was also an opportunity in the housing advocate survey for individuals to also comment as well, just like the development side. So some of the comments that we received was there's a gap in the affordable housing deficit. 1 in every 5 homes needs to be affordable housing, and then a potential revenue source could be some type of fee that would be assessed on purchase and rental transactions, whether it be a recording fee or some type of transaction fee to generate more revenue for affordable housing. Location should definitely be considered when we're thinking about affordable housing, and a need to balance affordable requirements versus the burden on market rate developers. Flexibility is needed as each project has its own constraints on a case-by-case basis. And when possible, the town should purchase land for affordable housing and partner with affordable housing developers. Additional feedback was to consider affordable ownership programs that combine equity wealth and permanent affordability, something like a land trust or Habitat for Humanity. More town funding in the project should equal longer affordability terms. So if the town's putting in some money, they should produce longer term affordability. Affordable rental units at 50% AMI and below should really be left to tax credit projects versus incentive zoning, because they're getting the subsidies. And then prioritize the lowest AMI percentages, and then consider tiny homes as both affordable options for rental and ownership. So those are some of the other things. And then we held an informational session for the housing advocates. And so there was just some questions on will the presentation be available to the public? So everything is being recorded. Every housing advisory board or anything we did for those study sessions is available to go back. So I just clarified for those viewers on that call. We're streaming live, and then IT puts it on our YouTube channel. And have other municipalities implemented similar incentive programs? Throughout the state and regionally, we've only seen policies maybe just on a standalone basis for something like a density bonus, not a full umbrella of options maybe on this scale, but there are other jurisdictions that have implemented some sort of incentive program like a density bonus. Which incentives would be most effective? We had a question on that call, and we haven't implemented anything yet. We're just in the draft stage, so we don't have anything we haven't put anything out there yet to have empirical data, because we don't have a policy yet. So other comments today I received is more affordable housing near downtown and more affordable housing for teachers, police, and public servants. So with that said, I'll just catch my breath temporarily. So that was a lot, and I will turn it back over to Chair Welch to circle back with the Housing Advisory Board. I just want to remind the Housing Advisory Board and those watching that this is not an action item. This is just an informational item this afternoon. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Chair Welch.
Okay, thank you, CJ. That was a high-powered, fast presentation. Thank you. So what I'd like to do is go through and ask each person that's here on the Housing Advisory Board to provide a couple comments. What were the things that stuck out to you? What were the areas that we could maybe take some action on or think about making some changes to either the policy manual or the administration manual? So I'm kind of going to follow the order that I did the roll call in, except that I'm going to put Rhett second to last and put me very last so that, there's less chance of, biasing what people have to say. So with that said, that would mean that Tina would have the first opportunity to, give some overall thoughts on what happened here and what the survey results were. So Tina, do you have any comments?
I'm going to be honest and say I'm still processing
Okay, that's
the
fine.
information. But my initial thought is what great information we have gathered here. And for that, I am deeply appreciative. And I think that that there will be, this gives a lot of information for direction on sort of next steps into what we can and want to consider, what to incorporate, what to strive for. But I think just my initial reaction was just how pleased I am at the amount of information we received and the participation from the different constituencies. And so for that, and for the folks that are listening, I'm incredibly grateful for the input. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Next would be Valeria.
Also still trying to process. I did note that there were several of the comments that came after the results that noted a few incompatibilities between the incentives and other constraints. For example, those related to the mortgages. How is that? And it's just, I guess it's a question, but when in the process is this program being tested, by the legal team, or how does that work? Because I just wonder, the creativity could take us very far, but then if reality is going to bring this back down, wouldn't it be good to have some sort of counseling at this point of each of the incentives, whether they are actually feasible?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would imagine at some point we need to get some input from the town attorney or whoever is the appropriate, has the appropriate expertise. But that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think that is going to happen. Definitely, our town attorney, our office of our town attorney will definitely be. They have already seen the first draft manuals of what we've presented, the very first draft, and so as we're working and the housing advisory board starts to get closer to where we feel you guys are able to come up with some type of policy recommendations, that's really before we take it to town councils, when we'll have our legal team review and then take it to town council, make sure everything that we're proposing is number one, legal, and also it can be carried out, from a staffing administration standpoint as well. So staffing capacity standpoint, I should say, as well. So both need to be taken into account. But yeah, so legal has reviewed the draft manuals to date, and also once we have, because once we come up with something, right, we're that's what we're trying to do here through this. Right now, we're just in the informational study session stage, but as we get closer to where the Housing Advisory Board is going to start getting ready to recommend things, and we have a more fine-tuned criteria in here. Right now, we're just getting feedback to give to you, and then once you guys come up with the recommendations, then at that point we'll have something better to show legal to say, hey, this is what it looks like we're heading, for example. So
It makes sense. Just clarifying the step of where we were. But thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you, Valeria. Next, I'm going to go to next on the list is Jacob Rogers. And do you have any comments, Jacob?
Yeah, I think there are several, I guess several items that we could really take a look at a little further deep into. I think, look, and Val had a good point of getting creative is one thing. I think that's one of the comments I had last meeting was, taking a very creative approach to this, while at the same time, what is feasible and what can actually be done, and then also adding what is, what's legal and what's not. We've got several, we've sent this out to several of our members. I know that Paul Kane sent it out to all of his members. I didn't send it out to several. I sent it out to all of our members. And I got some of the same feedback that he got. I'll share, and I think Paul shared a memorandum from HUD that, you know, deed restrictions on income violates FHA rules. And so I don't mind sending that out to the committee, as well as, you know, we had two of our members, I know one of Paul's members as well, brought up that according to HUD regulations, it does not allow the builder to income verify buyers. So there's several legal issues. I think we really need to. There's no point in putting this into a plan if it's not going to work. And so saying that is one thing. So I agree with Val. And then the next thing is certainly the several items that were mentioned on here on that we could tweak some of this. I think are significant. Even though they're little tweaks, I think it can be significant. I don't know why 16 units per acre is much different than 14, but maybe it's certainly something to take a look at. I think so. I would hope that we could take these some of these suggestions from the practitioners as as serious as we can, because I mean, if those are the folks who are going to be able to take advantage of this and actually use this, if you will. So I think that's all I've got for right now. Oh, I do have one more thing I wanted to share with the group. ULI is holding an event on Urban Land Institute. It's holding an event on March 24th about public-private partnerships for affordable housing. It's going to be in downtown Durham at the Venable Center. I'm going to put the link in the chat for anybody that's interested in attending that. There are several really good speakers involved in that. Some DHIC, Durham County Self-Help, and some others. I think this would be, certainly a great, opportunity for this committee to dive a little bit deeper into that topic. But that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. If you could put the link in the chat, that would be good. That sounds interesting to me. It's not that far off, but hopefully it's far enough that it might be doable to attend. That's an in-person meeting, I guess.
It is. It's at downtown Durham. And I also put in the chat about, the city of Raleigh eliminated parking minimums on Tuesday. So that's a massive thing when it comes to zoning reform and looking at these items. There are several items that are just coming down the pike anyway, just because it makes sense for affordability, for a more walkable community. Many different items. Obviously, parking minimums is one. There are several others that are to it, and I think that we're kind of thinking of them as bargaining chips right now, when it's kind of the wave of the future anyway. I've always said that zoning, the way we think about it today, is so draconian that one day, and it's not going to be that much longer, that we're going to look at this and say, was this really the right way of doing land use and making these decisions? And I don't think it's going to be, because we're not making decisions for a community. We're making it's these one-off deals. And so I think we ought to look at, City of Raleigh's got a lot of great initiatives when it comes to affordability right now. And we ought to look at some of our neighbors and what they're doing. Same way with Durham. But that's all I've got. Thanks, Phil.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Jacob. Next would be Molly.
It's hard to go after so many people that have all these great things to say and try to come up with new great things to say. Ditto everything that was said already. This is really good info. Zoning is not my wheelhouse. So I understand zoning a little bit. So reading it, I don't know what would impact communities versus impact the developers to produce more affordable housing. What's the trade-off? And have like I think we just heard that Raleigh dropped the parking requirement. Have any other neighboring communities or communities similar to Apex utilize some of these zoning changes, and how did that work for them? And did it spur more development of affordable housing without causing a lot of consternation or problems in their communities?
Okay, well, I can let CJ answer that, but I think there was a question related to that before in terms of other municipalities that may have tried incentive zoning, affordable housing incentive zoning in the past. I think that as far as Wake County is concerned, and CJ, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that we're the first town to really consider, kind of a comprehensive menu of possible zoning or affordable housing zoning incentives.
Yeah, I mean, within Wake County, this would be the first like actual dedicated affordable housing incentive zoning policy. City of Durham probably is the closest to us that has a density bonus with mixed results, and of course, Town of Chapel Hill's got the mandatory inclusionary zoning with mixed results. So I think, when you take a look at this, what we're proposing to do is this is proposing to be part of the solution, not the entire solution. So, this is one of 14 recommendations from our town council. And so there's if you look at you were part of the affordable housing plan, as Phil and Jacob were as well, and so this is just one strategy or one recommendation in a global set of recommendations. So this is designed to be part of a solution. Whether we get X amount of number of units per year through market rate development, that's more than maybe otherwise we would have gotten that given year. And as we're seeing, the number of, rezoning applications coming in and the amount of units that are coming in, and really not getting any affordable housing, this is just another way to take a look and see if we can do something. But I don't want people to have a false perception that, oh, this is going to close that gap that Phil was talking about, 1 in every 5 units or anything. No. It's just going to, whatever we can get out of it would be, that's what we can do. And, this is just part of this, one of many things that we have to implement here in Apex just to help us get us closer to filling those gaps. But so I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Molly?
Yeah, I just really hope that we won't take away many sidewalks. That I'm a walker, and there's so many places now I have to cross over and back and around to walk. So sidewalks are important, especially if we want to be walkable.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing that's important to know is this is not a mandatory policy. This is, so it's not like, this is going to be like, we're going to see every single application coming through, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Next on the list is Rhett. Rhett, would you like to comment on what CJ just went over?
Yeah. So I do want to echo that, this information I think was a great idea to get information from the community, both nonprofits and for-profit developers, because I think it provides you a unique opportunity to react to those policies that are out there. So kudos for doing that. I will say that it was interesting to me. I think we do have some opportunities, and Jacob sort of hinted at some of them, but there were clear things in the 2 presentations about, the AMI breakpoints and how and who to serve. So I think that's one area that we as a committee can talk more about once we look at the presentations a little more. I think we'll have some opportunities to change some of the policies to reflect what individuals wanted. So that's one thing. I thought it was interesting about height requirements and how that changes the dynamics of things. So I think that's one thing that we may have a more detailed discussion about. And then also the focus, at least on the nonprofit side, seemed to be focused on less than 50% AMI, and in particular at a 30% AMI. And to me, that's something that we'll have to think about in the policy itself, given that, to me, the concern from the private side was it's already difficult to build in affordable units at certain levels. And so trying to balance that versus the desire for 30% is going to be a challenge for us in the policy. So those are a few things. I also thought we might have an opportunity on the review process, where I think the policy was 50%. You get a review, faster review, and it was interesting to me that on the development community side they wanted 5%. So that's a drastic difference, right, between those two policies. So I think we'll have some conversation there. So I'll stop there, but I think those are a few things that sort of jumped out to me in that presentation.
Okay, thank you, Rhett. So first of all, I want to kind of echo what Rhett said about I believe it was Paul Kane and/or Jacob that suggested surveying the developers, and I think that was a really good idea. I know Audra, gave some strong support for it. I think there was some really good information, good ideas that came out of the developer survey, and it kind of shows how complex this issue is. I mean, not just affordable housing, but housing in general. Really, I mean, it's one of those things. It's almost like a balloon where if you push in one side, you get something else bubbling out the other side. So it's all wrapped together, and you have to be very judicious about changes that you make because they're going to be unintended consequences for sure. There was one suggestion that I wanted to highlight here that I thought was really a good idea, and this was in the general comments. It was about page 17. The suggestion was the committee would benefit from someone explaining the economics of a deal to have an understanding of what is realistic in terms of percentages and AMI. Actually, CJ did a little bit of that with his spreadsheet that he had that took a look at, what would the hit, what would the financial hit be on a developer to provide, X number of affordable units to people that earned, 30% and below of AMI, and just on up the line. I forget all the different categories, but I think 50% was one, 80% was one, 100%, and so forth. And I think it's very important for us to take into consideration, what the costs are to developers, so that we're not designing something that no one is going to be interested in. So that's my thought on that. I had, there were a lot of good comments, and as I said, it's a very, very complicated system. So at this point, I'm going to open it up, see if there are any other questions or comments in light of what the rest of us had to say. So at this point, I open the floor. If you want to raise your hand or put something in the chat. Actually, just raising your hand or just speaking up. There are not that many of us. I've been in Zoom meetings recently that have 40 or 100 people, and there it needs to be a little more controlled. I think we can do this a little bit less formally. And let me start with you, CJ. Did you have any reactions, responses to some of the points that people brought up, or just looking over the comments? I mean, do you see this as being a much bigger job than we originally thought, or is it still going to be manageable?
Well, I think the task was pretty big to start with, so I think the expectation came in pretty black and white that this is a big task. This is something that This is actually one of the highest priority items that town council wants to see happen, is to draft a policy and get a policy in place. But I think everybody makes a good point. I think the first meeting going back, I think it was Jacob that may have said, and I thought it was really good what he said. He said, let's just take a look. We're proposing 10 incentives. Let's just see the feedback we get first to see how, for quote unquote, how good they are, how the feedback, before we think about, the setting, maybe like the minimum percentage, 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever it is, And I think that has to be balanced out. I think that it's got to be a balance of, the developed market rate, the applicants have to pencil out. I don't think we want to set the requirements so high that they go somewhere else or do something. but at the same time, we have the needs of the community. So it's really a balancing act. But I think that's what I was trying to do with those pro formas, was just to put some information out there to say, this is the real impact that a developer may have to put in their pro forma that's coming across the table and applying for a rezoning or a planned unit development. So that's, trying to get the economics part of it. And that's why staff, when we originally looked at running some pro formas, running some numbers, and that's why we started very low as a minimum recommendation of 5% on site, because we kind of understood some of those economics and understood some of the incentives that we were going to be proposing. So I think, that's what that balancing was. So, but it's definitely a big task. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think we got some good initial feedback. We're going to continue to get feedback, throughout the process. I anticipate, a couple more informational sessions with the Housing Advisory Board, to clear up a few things here and there, and then, get more feedback, and then be able to, hopefully get some recommendations from you guys so we could take something to town council. So, but I think we're heading at least in the right direction, from doing our due diligence to continuing to get public input, development community input, and housing advocate input. So those are my initial comments.
Okay. All right. Thanks, CJ. I see Valeria, I'm sorry, you have your hand up.
Okay. Well, everybody calls me Val, so if you call me Val, it'll be okay. If you trips you a little less. So would it make any sense to do a little bit of benchmark with other communities? I know we were mentioned a few other communities nearby in the Triangle, but, I'm sure across the country, we've got great towns or municipalities which have introduced affordable housing programs, and maybe do some sort of quick market, I don't know if it's quick, but some market reach, with like successful initiatives, and looking at the whole package, what those initiatives entailed. I don't know if this makes any sense in this process. I'm very new in this, policy world, so I have no idea if it makes any sense in this stage, or this is too late, or this is too early, or it's just not a space for it. I was just trying to understand, to be able to contribute meaningfully, and I realized that I really have no idea about the true art of the deal for a builder. And as much as we want impact, on the end consumer, we want affordable housing, as you guys were saying, if we offer a program that no builders can take, it's going to be worth nothing. So I just wonder if doing a little bit of comparison, order lots, a little bit of market research would make sense at this point. And I'll just leave it at that. I'll mute myself.
Okay. Well, I believe that between CJ and Noor, they reached out to all the other municipalities in Wake County. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't know whether you were specifically talking about this subject, but I think Wake County is kind of a unique place in terms of the high growth. And so I think if we start here, we might learn something. And if there are other, like the Charlotte area is another fairly high growing place. I don't know whether it makes sense to reach out there as well, and whether we even have any people on the board here, the Housing Advisory Board, that might have connections there. CJ, do you have any thoughts on that?
When we did our initial research, you're correct. We definitely were staying within Wake County and we talked to just about every jurisdiction in Wake County, just see what they had to offer for affordable housing, whether it be policy. We even looked at accessory dwelling units. So we're pretty aware of what within Wake County, where we're at. We're also a sub-market of Wake County because we're a high cost area. So we're also not reflective of the general Wake County. So what we design, what someone else is doing in another jurisdiction, once again, may not be best reflective of here based on our, land cost, our sales prices, our rent levels, and all that kind of stuff. So we took a look at the market here, and we're really trying to come up with a menu of some incentives, other incentive density bonus ordinances that we have researched, maybe don't have as many. We're looking at 10 incentives. They might have reduced lot widths, reduced setbacks, density bonus itself, but in just a few, but not to the level. I haven't seen anything to the level of 10, up to 10 incentives, and developers can apply for up to all 10 in one per development, for example, if they meet those thresholds or whatever, wherever the housing advisory board and ultimately town council adopts. But yeah, if we really stayed within the Wake County to start, because we too have limited staffing capacity as well. So,
Right.
and so we're kind of having to do a lot of the work in-house as well. So that's kind of where we started, and that was our thought process. So.
So that brings up a question. I see Molly has her hand up. I'll defer to you, Molly. Go ahead.
But when you said about limited staff capacity, it made me wonder if these are successful or some, and there are, a 30-year period for rental. Do you have, who's the staff that's going to be going out annually to make sure that it is an affordable housing, that does the inspections and the client certifications? Do you have staff?
We anticipate growing. I mean, we're about 7 months old in our housing. I've been here 7 months. Nora's been here 7 months. We're the very first housing staff ever for Apex. So, we are planning and proposing to hopefully grow in housing staff. But that would, on rental developments, that would be us to do we do a sample size of monitoring on those units to double check the income, the rent level, and all that, as well as the ownership units to do annual occupancy checks to make sure that those units are still being occupied as principal residents. So, and
with the rental units, I know with at the Housing Finance Agency, they would do physical inspections as well to make sure they were still,
that's in the and that's all drafted in the administration manual, which is that second manual that staff drafted, and so that's all called out in there.
Like I hope there will be room or budget for additional staff, because it will be, that's a lot.
We're definitely trying to start small but continue to go up, and that's so I'll just to answer your question on any rental development that comes through, staff, the applicant is responsible for either the property owner or applicant is either responsible for managing those affordable units themselves, or hiring a third-party property manager. We're not going to be responsible for managing those units. We're just going to be responsible for some periodic annual checks, for example. So that reduces staff's burden. Now, on the ownership side, some of the comments we received is that the builders and developers are actually not responsible, shouldn't be responsible for income qualifying buyers. That is certainly something that we could help out with if needed, because we're going to have to review those buyers' profiles anyways, whether they go and get pre-approved at whatever lender that they end up using, right? For example, we're going to have to review to make sure that those applicants still meet our criteria. So that we're already involved in that process as well. So, but so that's we're trying to manage how much we intake right now and then how much we'll grow into. So on the rental side, for sure, it's a lot less staff burden. So it's just reviewing some annual occupancy checks and reports, for example. So.
Okay. I see that Tina has her hand up, so I'm going to recognize Tina.
Thank you. I just actually I just wanted to chime in with a bit of housekeeping notes, that we want to be careful how we use the chat, because this is a public meeting, and so we don't want to put items for discussion or items that are adding to discussion in the chat. If you need to step away to for a bio break, that kind of thing, and we need to adjourn, that's one thing. But we want to just be careful of how we utilize the chat. We don't want to use it for conversation. To that end, there is a comment about Chapel Hill just not being sued. I would disagree with that comment. Chapel Hill's been doing this a while, and I don't think it's quite that simple. And I see Rhett had a follow-up question to what Molly said. So Rhett, I don't know if you want to, again, just for public, full disclosure of the conversation, I don't know if you want to expound upon what you wrote in the chat and leading into Molly's question.
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, that's a great point, Tina. So thanks for bringing it up. I didn't even think of it that way. So, Yeah, I had the similar sort of concern or question that Molly had on the staffing piece, but I think for me, even more importantly, not the enforcement, so to speak, but more of the upfront sort of cost. Should this zoning policy be put in place, like what is that going to do to staff burden? Now, it may be that initially it's not that a lot of the development community will not try to take advantage of this, and so it may not be a burden up front, but I do have that concern given the availability of staff and all the other things that they likely are responsible for. So that's, I think, will be one discussion point that we need to bring up at some point. I also wanted to note that I'm assuming that the public information of the survey results, people can see that, right? Or they can get it. I just wanted to go on record to say that the comments that reflect anything about the Raleigh Area Land Trust or Land Trust were not me. None of that stuff came from me. So I think it's important to say that because I don't want it to seem like that was a sort of a targeted response to make sure it was on record. So I read all the responses, and I will say that I actually did not fill out a response. So I wanted that to be sort of public record, that it's coming from other individuals as a recommendation and not from me, from the land trust, because I don't think that's the right way to do it. So I wanted to bring that up. Jacob, I would be interested in seeing, I saw the comments about the deed restriction, and I would be curious to know what that perspective is and how it can be overcome, because obviously a lot of housing advocates themselves do income verification all the time. I think it's more of a private developer question or issue maybe, because, you know, those of us that are the Casas of the world, the DHICs of the world, the Habitats, they obviously do verify that folks do fit requirements. And so I would love to see that just as a, you know, for informational piece.
For the deed?
Yeah, for the deed restriction, yeah.
All right, I can unsend that. I know Paul sent it over to CJ, but I'll send it out to the committee now. Cool. I can't, it's a PDF, so I don't know how to attach it to something in this meeting, so I'll email it.
All right, great, thanks.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, well, make a couple points, I guess. I wonder, CJ, whether, are you familiar with the Triangle J Council of whatever they are? And I wonder if they would have information on other municipalities in their area that might have tried some of these things before. It's just, I have no idea whether that would be fruitful, but I know they're aware of, you know, Apex's affordable housing plan because they actually came and made a presentation. It was actually right after the Wake County put their affordable housing plan together, and they came to a community event that was sponsored by I think the Apex town manager to talk about, you know, what it's kind of the broader context of affordable housing. And the other thing, and I know you have contacts in the Wake County Housing Department. I know that's not quite the title; it's a little bit longer than that. But I wonder whether they might be able to point to other municipalities within Wake County, at least, that that might have tried some of these incentive policies. And finally, I'm beginning to wonder, there's so much good information that came out of these surveys, both from the developers and from the housing advocates. I'm wondering whether any of that would be helpful for the town council members to hear, you know, other than Audra, obviously, just as a kind of you know, what would I call it? You know, just kind of a status report on what's going on, and to give them a chance to kind of digest some of that information too, because the policy is really important, but I think the rationale that leads up to the policy is also important.
Yeah, so I have a work session with town council on March 29th to cover a lot of different topics, but I am going to give them just at least an update on the affordable housing incentive zoning policy. The timing just happened to work on March 29th for town council, so it was fitting that we had our meeting here on the 16th. So I have a little bit more fresh information to update with them. So I will be sharing where we're at with the affordable housing incentive zoning policy process on March 29th with town council. So among many other items. So,
Okay.
and I have reached out to Habitat for Humanity and asked them about their particular loan model, and they don't use FHA or any FHA insured loan programs. They use a 2% down payment conventional loan. They gave me the names of both of their banks that they use. I forget them off the top of my head. And I also talked to the Community Home Trust, who does Chapel Hills community land trust, the 99-year deed restriction that they place on those properties. And they also do not use FHA or any FHA insured products. They use Fannie Mae backed products. So I just want to let you know, I have talked to them, and I also have, we'll be talking to some other lenders out there to see what other options there are besides non-FHA. If that's the law, and if that's what it says, that we can't be doing deed restrictions against FHA or FHA insured. Other lenders are informing me there are other loan products out there, portfolio loans that don't get sold on the secondary market, that keep in house. So we just want to make sure that we're also looking at other products as well. So just wanted to share that with you.
Okay, good. You're doing your homework. That's great. Tina, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I see the slide.
Okay, go ahead.
No, and I think along with town council, I think a short presentation to planning board would be great for just the reasons that have been laid out. Just giving additional context, and at the previous previous planning board meeting just this past week, I will say the CJU, you were given a big shout out from the developer who was presenting just about all the work and assistance that you had provided, and so I think that was helpful feedback, obviously for the planning board to hear, as we're continuing along this process. And so I don't think it's a similar, that it's not the same that you would be presenting to the town council, but I think it would be great for the planning board to just get an update, maybe a smaller, more compact version.
Okay, yeah, I definitely could work on putting something on the calendar. I'll work with Amanda and Diane on that. So.
Okay, I think we had a lot of comments on the developer survey, and I don't want to leave out the housing advocate survey. So are there any thoughts on some of the points that were raised there, especially in terms of the length of the affordability of the projects and so forth? I honestly think that is one of the key variables. And I don't know whether the developers would agree with that, but I'm familiar with projects that were started maybe 20 years ago as affordable housing projects that are now expiring in terms of their affordability requirement, that some municipalities like Raleigh in particular are developing early warning systems so that they can see which ones are expiring and see what they need to do to continue them. So it is, you don't think 20 years is a long time, but I mean, some people stay in their apartments for that length of time. And, if they expire and, the owner of the building is able to raise rents without constraint, then a lot of people might not be able to stay in those affordable apartments. So any discussion, comments, questions on the housing advocate survey?
I'll just speak up without even raising my hand.
That's fine. That's fine.
That I do think for the rental multifamily rental, it needs to be 30 years. I think anything less than that is 20 years, like you said, comes really too quickly. So I think you really want, for purchase, for single family purchase or condo purchase, how do you reconcile affordability versus wealth building? Because certainly when you buy a home, that's part of, hopefully part of some wealth building, is you get equity in it as the home becomes more valuable. How does that reconcile if there's an affordability period to that unit?
Yeah. It really depends on the model that is utilized for those particular units. For example, like Habitat for Humanity uses a shared appreciation model. So the longer that the homeowner or homeowners remain in that unit during their period of affordability, the greater percentage of equity they would get upon resale. And then also, if you're using maybe like a deed restriction model, like a resale deed restriction, maybe that's tied to AMI or CPI percentage. There is a sliding scale of equity appreciation they're getting, through like an AMI percentage change, because the AMI comes out every year and typically goes up. Say, let's just say for the sake of it, it goes up 5% a year. So they'd be getting 5% equity, plus they're paying down on their principal mortgage. So they're gaining, what, $400 or $500, $300 to $500 a month in principal. They're $5,000 a year or whatever, so they're doing it that way for the period of affordability. So depending on the model that's used, it will dictate their potential equity appreciation.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, that's true. I know Habitat Wake, I should say, just changed their model to a shared appreciation model, and it is in a deed restriction. As a result, there is some funding that they're no longer qualified for. So there, it's kind of a balance of the benefits versus the costs of that. Any other comments? The other thing that occurs to me is that what CJ presented is really a menu of possibilities, and as the policy is refined, I think that there will be a prioritization of those incentives in some fashion, and in addition, there's going to be interplay between the different incentives to the point that that each situation, each proposal by a developer will have its own uniqueness. But I think that with the policy manual that will be provided to the town council, they'll have a much better framework for themselves, actually, and also for the developers in terms of, what are the trade-offs that can be made between the incentives and the amount of affordable housing that's provided, and what the target group is that's provided. So all that's to be worked out, but I think I begin to see the complexity of all the different levers that can be pulled to encourage developers, both affordable housing developers and for-profit. There are for-profit builders that know how to put together the finance packages using tax credits and or not, so that the appropriate package of incentives can be presented to encourage the voluntary provision of the affordable homes. So I don't know whether you see it that way, CJ, but I think I think this will really be helpful to the town council and to the developers to lay out what the different variables are and what they can expect from the town council.
I think Vice Chair Fussell had his hand up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll let you off the hook for now. Rhett, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was actually going to follow up on something you just said, Phil, and that is, we're obviously just using this for informational purposes right now, but I'm assuming the intent is at our next meeting, we will talk through more about or debate more about what changes to make to this policy. Is that correct, CJ? I just wanted to make sure, because I know people are going to be interested in what that means next steps, since most of this is just for information today.
Yeah, that is correct. That at least the staff's intention was to continue to have another informational session today to soak in the feedback from both the development and the housing advocacy communities, and then on April 7th, which is our next Housing Advisory Board regular meeting, we turn our attention back to the policy and start, for lack of a better term, fine tuning the specifics of the policy. Okay, so what now we can start going back and talking about what's the minimum on-site percentage, what are the AMIs that you guys want to include, what, one by one, and start doing that. And then as we get some consensus from the Housing Advisory Board, if it's clear cut, for example, that 20 units is the trigger. So developments 20 units or greater. If everybody's like, okay, yeah, we all agree with that, let's cross that off and let's work on the balance of what's left each meeting until we can get hopefully to a recommendation for town council. So that is the thought process. Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's very helpful. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. That's a good question, and that was kind of something I was wondering about too. So we still have a lot of work to do. That's clear to me, and I presume that a fair amount of the time, the 2 hours in our April 7th meeting, will be devoted again to this affordable housing incentive zoning policy.
Yeah, and I just also wanted to remind both and for the folks that might be watching from home that our next step is the next Housing Advisory Board meeting is our regular meeting that will be on April 7th. It will be virtual, and that'll be at 5 o'clock, and that's all on your calendars, Housing Advisory Board, but also just to let the public know that is our next meeting. So I just wanted to put a slide up there to show, that. So
that's good. Thank you, CJ.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's all I have. So
okay. Is there anything more that we need to discuss unless the Housing Advisory Board members have additional comments? If CJ, if we go back through, I went through the survey results fairly quickly. If we go back through and we have some things that we want to highlight to other Housing Advisory Board members, is it okay for us to share those things with other members of the board?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you want to email something out to the group, or if you want to bring it up at the next April 7th regular meeting, we'll be that's right around the corner. So we'll be meeting again in a couple of weeks. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And will the slides from your presentations on the surveys be available at some point?
Yes, that's our IT department, who's actually on the line with us. They stay on the entire meeting. They're really quick about posting stuff on the YouTube town channel. So I anticipate that this will be up within the next couple days, if not sooner. So but yes, everything here will be available for the public. You guys can go watch it. I know Nora and I go back sometimes and watch certain things because we have to produce the meeting minutes. So we'll go back and just to make sure. So this will all be published very, very soon. IT has been really good.
Okay, but I guess what I'm asking, in addition to the recording of the meeting, is there a way to get just like the deck of your slides that you used on the surveys and so forth?
Oh, yeah.
How could you send them out to us, or how?
Yeah, I could. I'll send the PDF of just the PowerPoint slides. Is what you're asking? What you saw today? I can send that to the Housing Advisory Board.
Right.
That's not a problem. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's good. Okay, well, with that, then I guess I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. I think we've covered what we want to cover, and thanks to CJ's good preparation, we were able to get through it a little faster than we thought. So we'll give back some time to our faithful participants here. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I guess people are just enjoying themselves so much they want to stay on and
So moved. So moved.
Okay, Molly has made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thanks, Val. Okay. I think we can just do this by a voice vote. All those saying yay, please indicate that.
Yay.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay. And all those who are opposed to the motion, please indicate that. All right, not hearing any nays, then I'm going to say it's a unanimous decision, and we'll be meeting again on April 7th from 5 to 7, and I look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.